better look deep. This occult stuff is real.
So hey guys, Stinky Cash here, and there's something I want you to think about, all right? The telephone and the automobile are about the same age. They were invented around the exact same time, okay? So if a telephone can go from this to this, why are automobiles still running on gasoline? Why are we still dependent on oil? Well, the answer is because oil props up the value of the dollar. It's the only reason we still use oil. It's the only reason why we haven't converted to 100% solar energy and electric cars. The oil market props up the value of the dollar. And to understand this, you've got to go all the way back to 1944. In 1944, the world leaders met at the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire. And at this conference, they created a system, an economic monetary system, where all the world's currencies were going to be backed by the US dollar, and the US dollar was going to be backed by gold at a rate of $35 per ounce. So all the world's banks, all these foreign nations had the right to convert their currency into dollars and then convert those dollars into gold whenever they wanted. Okay, this was a quasi-gold standard. And this system of the foreign currencies being backed by the dollar and the dollar being backed by gold worked for over 20 years. Okay, but by the mid-60s, in LBJ's welfare and warfare state, other nations started seeing the debt spending America was accumulating. Okay, as our debt was going up, we were printing more and more money. And this caused an inflation, and this caused a panic. And all the foreign nations started converting their currencies into dollars so that they can get gold. Okay, they were all cashing out America's gold. America's gold supply went from over 20,000 tons all the way down to 8,100 tons in 1971. That's when Nixon went on TV and said, "I'm going to defend the dollar against the foreign speculators."
And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Okay, in 1971, I think it was August 15th, 1971, Nixon ended the Bretton Woods Agreement. He closed the gold window. No longer could foreign nations convert their currency into gold at a rate of $35 per ounce. And when this happened, it caused an inflation. It caused the value of the dollar to go down. And this was until 1973 when Henry Kissinger struck a deal with the Saudi Arabians. This was called the petrodollar agreement. Kissinger convinced the Saudis to convince OPEC to only price their oil in dollars. Okay, and in exchange, the U.S. would offer military protection and arms and money. So by getting OPEC to only price their oil in dollars, it forces foreign nations to need U.S. dollars to buy oil. If Japan now wants to buy oil, they need U.S. dollars. And the only way to get U.S. dollars is to either convert their own currency, the yen, into dollars, or to sell us goods to get dollars in order to buy oil. So by creating this demand for dollars overseas, it props up the value of the dollar. This is called the petrodollar. And since 1973, the dollar has been propped up by the oil market. And this is the only reason why we're still dependent on oil. The day the petrodollar dies, the day the dollar collapses, will be the day the U.S. government comes out pretty much saying, we no longer need oil. A lot of people like to say, oh, these wars are fought over oil. These wars are fought over oil. We went into Iraq and we stole their oil. No, we did not. We do not steal oil. We do not need to steal oil. We're more than willing to pay for oil as long as it's priced in US dollars. If it's priced in US dollars, it's the same thing as stealing it because we could just print the dollars out of thin air. We don't need to control the world's oil supply if we control the currency it's priced in. And the day that the US-Saudi Arabia relationship ends, and the day that the petrodollar dies, will be the day that the US will want to end the oil market. Okay, they're going to want to kill oil. If they can't control the oil market by controlling the currency it's priced in, then they're going to want to kill oil for everybody. Okay, and that's what the climate change agenda is. This is why the Rockefeller family has sold all their shares in oil. They've sold all their interests in oil. They're out of oil. The Rockefeller family. Okay, John D. Rockefeller is the oil giant. And his family has sold all their shares related to oil. And they're backing the climate change agenda. They're pushing these climate change, global warming lies. Why do you think that is? Because the climate change agenda will kill the oil industry. And they're going to want to kill the oil industry the day oil is no longer priced in dollars. So the U.S. knows that they're Saudi Arabia's bitch. We need them. We need them to price their oil in dollars or the dollar could collapse. Okay, this is why we have such a close relationship with them. This is why you see George W. Bush making out with the king. They kiss these guys' asses, but they have backup plans in place in case the House of Saud ever decides to turn on us. Okay, they've planted the lies, the disinformation that 15 out of the 19 9/11 hijackers were Saudi Arabians. Okay, this was disinformation that was pushed in the conspiracy world. Okay, they had the first level of conspiracy theorists making the claim that 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi. The problem with this is most of them are still alive. There were no hijackers because there were no planes. So this lie that the hijackers were Saudi, it was just planted in there so that one day we could turn on Saudi Arabia. This is why in the news you're hearing that Congress okayed the victims' families in 9/11 to sue the House of Saud in connection with the 9/11 attacks. These 28 pages that they've been making such a big deal about is going to implicate Saudi Arabia. This is just like a backup plan. They've planted this idea. They've been promoting the 28 pages. And the day they want to turn on the House of Saud is the day they'll release the 28 pages and the day they'll blame Saudi Arabia for 9/11. The problem is they really had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks. It was Israel. Okay, the Zionists were behind 9/11. There were 5 Israeli Mossad agents sent to New York City with prior knowledge of the event, sent there to film it. And they went back to Israel and they went on Israeli TV and they bragged about it. They don't want you to know about Israel's connections to 9/11. They want to push the lies that it was maybe Saudi Arabia. This is just a way to turn on Saudi Arabia. This is just a way to keep them in the petrodollar agreement because the people who were running this world, they want to keep the petrodollar alive for as long as possible. Okay, they want to postpone the inevitable, the collapse of the dollar. The dollar has to collapse just as every other fiat monetary system has. The dollar has to collapse. It's an exponential function that shoots up to infinity. All exponential functions shoot up to infinity. And infinity means that your money has no more value. And they want to collapse the dollar. They want to collapse America. They want to start World War III because out of the ashes of World War III and out of the ashes of the fall of America and the collapse of the dollar will rise their one world government and their one world currency, the New World Order. It's like a phoenix that has to rise from the ashes. Order out of chaos. They need to collapse the world's only superpower so that they could have no world superpower. So it could be a one world government. That's why everybody involved in World War III will lose. There'll be no winner of World War III. We'll all be losers. And after the devastation and destruction of World War III, all the world's leaders are going to meet somewhere and say the only solution is the one world government. So watch out because I believe the end of 2016 is going to be a big year. I think this might be the year that we turn on Saudi Arabia, our relationship ends, the petrodollar agreement ends, and the dollar will collapse. We're already seeing new money pouring into gold. Gold has been climbing, and with it, silver has been climbing. And every time it spikes, the world's bankers do whatever they can to suppress the price. Okay, they don't want gold to go up in price because that's a signal that people are scared. So they try to suppress the price of gold, but all this is going to do is create newer highs. There's a bubble in gold that's being suppressed, and eventually gold is going to shoot over $2,000 an ounce. That's where all the scared money is going to run to. They're going to run into gold. It's going to run into silver. And owning gold and silver is useless if you don't own a firearm to protect your gold and silver. If you're prepping, getting ready for the collapse with gold and silver, but you don't have guns to protect your gold and silver, all you're doing is accumulating wealth for someone else who does have a gun who's going to take it from you. So make sure you're armed. Make sure you have silver and gold. Make sure you have some water hoarded up. Okay, you need a water supply because they're going to turn off the water grid. They're going to turn off the power grid, and you're going to have nothing. So you're going to have to make sure you have some water saved up. Buy yourself a pallet of bottled water if you have to, and just store it, because you're not going to have access to running water when the economic collapse happens. Okay, so be prepared and be ready, because it's coming. Okay, I don't mean to push fear porn. I don't mean to be a crazy conspiracy theorist, but this is coming. If you understand monetary policy, you understand that the US dollar is a pyramid scheme, and it's going to shoot up to infinity. It's an exponential function. It has to shoot up to infinity. It's just a matter of time. And this monetary system that we've been on since 1973, when Kissinger created the petrodollar, this is one of the longest lasting fiat currencies that's ever been around. It's lasted over 40 years. Okay, so it's about to collapse. And they want it to collapse. They need it to collapse, but they don't want it to collapse before they're ready. Right now, they're moving their chess pieces around their board, getting ready to put you into checkmate. Okay, but there are opposing forces that are also moving their pieces, playing defense. So they're moving their pieces. They're getting, prepared for the moment they're going to push the button and collapse the system. Okay, they want it to collapse on their own terms, like a building, like a controlled demolition. Okay, you're not going to let the building fall on its own. You're going to bring it down with a controlled demolition so that you can control the outcome. These people need to blame the collapse on a scapegoat. They need to blame it on global warming. They need to blame it on terrorists. They need to blame it on the House of Saud. They don't want to be the ones that get blamed for the economic collapse. They don't want their own policies to be held responsible for the economic collapse, because then they won't be able to retain power after the collapse. So they're going to need a scapegoat. So right now, they're just playing a game of chess. They're moving their pieces around the board. They've been doing so for over 8 years. And when the moment's right, they're going to put us into checkmate.
This is good, isn't it?
We still use oil. It's the only reason why we haven't converted to 100% solar energy and electric cars. The oil market props up the value of the dollar. And to understand this, you've got to go all the way back to 1944. In 1944, the world leaders met at the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire.
You better look deep. This occult stuff is real.
So hey guys, Stinky Cash here. And there's something I want you to think about, all right? The telephone and the automobile are about the same age. They were invented around the exact same time. Okay, so if a telephone can go from this to this, why are automobiles still running on gasoline? Why are we still dependent on oil? Well, the answer is because oil props up the value of the dollar. It's the only reason we... And at this conference, they created a system, an economic monetary system, where all the world's currencies were going to be backed by the US dollar, and the US dollar was going to be backed by gold at a rate of $35 per ounce. So all the world's banks, all these foreign nations